Hey friends, this is Allison Steele, and you're listening to Unravel with Allison, a show where I take a concept that's got me in knots, and we unravel it together. Thanks for being here. So I'm recording this on Easter Monday. I don't have a name for this episode yet, but I need to get started, because my brain has been firing off on this, and we're just going to dive in. I was thinking about the Trinity, the Father aspect, the Mother aspect, the child aspect. Mother, Father, Holy Spirit, whatever your Trinity is that you can relate to this. I'm going to start off with the Mother, Father, child aspects and see where that takes me. I've been stuck on Father in particular because I feel like I have a lot of that like masculine energy, that paternal instinct. Like I created my environments for myself so I could be the provider. So those typical male structures, like I was more comfortable taking on those roles than I were the otherwise maternal or more feminine aspects. Things like flow and emotion and just being present and creative, those weren't really my strong suits, but following structure and order, I was able to participate on a wider basis. I didn't like the terminology of the father aspect though. And then when I really got into the idea, biblically, even of like the Father, like I think everything spiritually, biblically, sacred script, anything good or bad that exists can be embodied, can be personally understood. That role can be taken on at the human level. And that's how I get my sense of understanding for basically anything, as I make it digestible. When it's in my system, I learn how to get it out. So this father aspect in particular today has been like rattling in my brain about structure and patterns. And when I think of paternal, I can hear pattern in that. In one of my classes today, we were shown this video where it's a crowd that is chanting. And there are subtitles also. The idea here is that they're going to change the subtitles and you're going to hear a different thing. Even though it's the same sound on a loop, when you change the words that you read as it plays, you hear the words differently. Your expectation changes based on the information that has been deposited. You now have a different outcome expected. And that's how our brain works with like expectations and patterns. When we expect it, it's so underlying and subliminal even that we're so affected by these things, by everything in our surroundings. So I'm starting to look, instead of that masculine aspect of the father, to see it as more of the patterns, the pattern recognition, and whether or not that is serving us. The way that we see the world, can we break our little patterns and try to deposit something else? I was listening to a flat earth discussion recently. One of the arguments that is so like blatantly obvious to people who pay attention to like just the math and science of it all, of pattern recognition and how things seem to make sense. It seems like such a silly idea when you're like, every single other planet seems to appear to us in globe form. What makes us think we're so special? Why would we be any different? Like the pattern is so blatantly obvious in front of us. The information stacks up in this exact way. It couldn't be anything but that, right? Who's to say? The father aspect wants us to identify symmetry. But in the world and in nature, we see patterns, we see fractals, we see the same but different. We can recognize the similarities, but there aren't supposed to be consistencies. But we're looking for consistency when anomalies are actually the primary. And getting into that family tree idea, symmetry of your family tree, the same tree. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You know, our story of original sin, even the apple, to me, that apple represents the childlike wonder, the curiosity. That was the draw to the apple. It wasn't the precious fruit that itself, but it was the curiosity that sparked the action. So maybe it wasn't time for the apple to be picked, and that was the only problem. Is maybe it just wasn't ripe yet. Or maybe the apple wasn't supposed to exist and it was supposed to be a pear. and it didn't get the chance to fully develop because it was interfered with. That to me is the essence of the story. And when something in its primary form is interrupted or unable to appropriately develop, it's only understood for what it is. The apple that doesn't fall far from the tree, you wouldn't expect it to amount to anything else because of the parent tree. And however you were raised, that's the tree that you're kind of expected to develop in and around as you start to enter the world. So people see symmetry between you and your family. But this is where that apple, that childlike curiosity becomes a pear, the parent. Because when something is apparent, it's obvious. It's removed of that childlike wonder. There is no curiosity. It's right in front of you, and it is what it is. And based on symmetry, structure, pattern recognition, and expectation, we can see the apparent nature of the paternal aspect. And these things get embedded early on, and I'm going to use a maternal example for this paternal aspect. I was talking to my mom recently about how she learned how to take care of her home, clean the kitchen, that kind of stuff. When she was growing up and spent time in the kitchen with her grandma, they were just hanging out together while staying busy. And grandma would kind of narrate what she was doing and why she was doing it. She wasn't saying like, this is the right way, this is the wrong way, this is how you should do it. And like, there was no potential to do wrong. It was just hanging out with grandma time. So grandma's using this time to explain what she's doing and why she's doing it. It all carries a purpose. She's just explaining the steps in a way that makes sense with zero pressure and a bunch of love packed into that moment. So when that structure and understanding is embedded into my mom as a child, it just makes sense. It's second nature now. It is apparent when it revisits itself. When my mom is now in a different environment and grandma's not there, but she's doing the same things now that she did with her grandma, it just appears in her mind that she knows the right thing to do. It's very obvious to her what the right thing to do is based on what she learned when she was younger. When you have an understanding, like a true understanding of what something is and why it is the way that it is and what is the very comfortable and makes the most sense thing to do next, like once you get that kind of vibe with your environment, it frees you up mentally in a very comfortable way that you don't feel like you're carrying a load. You're just going to do the next thing on your list. There isn't baggage with it. Like you're not spending all day reminiscing about time with grandma or whatever, but you have these little moments that are intentionally fleeting. They flutter in and appear when they're needed. Like, hey, this is why we do it and why, as you're doing it. And then they flutter away. It doesn't have to be an interruption of your day, or it doesn't even have to be something that's focused on. It's just something that comes through. And it's like, okay, we know how to do this, do it real quick and then hop out. But then you still have a little bit of that love packed in because that's how it was initially delivered. That's the part that like sewed it together for you. It made it what it was. That's what made it so digestible. So now you have that pattern recognition, comfortably fleeting, that you don't have to carry the weight of the knowledge around with you or have to pressure yourself to memorize how to do it exactly and correctly. You just know that when it shows up again, you're going to do it the right way because of how you learned. It's pretty simple stuff, but then when you try to teach others just the right and wrong way of it without having that environmental support, I can see how certain things make so much sense to her that didn't make sense to me when I was taught them. Because when I was taught them, I was in a learning environment of this is how we do it and why we do it because we're doing it right now and it needs to be done the correct way right now. It didn't like naturally develop. And even if the situation with grandma was kind of orchestrated, like grandma knew she was going to teach, there was still no right and wrong tied into it. So I think the maternal aspect is your relationship to the material substance. So while this is all happening, the reason why it's remembered so comfortably was because of that love part of it, because of the relationship to the environment, not just the structure and environment itself. That's paternal. Maternal is the relationship to the material, what it means for you specifically. A conversation about why we do what we do is so much easier to absorb and retain when there isn't the potential to have something go wrong or have there be additional matter assumed. So when you're in the position to remember those things, you don't have to stop and think, wait, what are the rules? You just know what to do when it's right in front of you because you remember the essence of the material. The essence of the material is maternal. That's the emotional part tied to the structural aspect. That's the maternal aspect. So it sounds material, but it's not. It's your relationship with the material. But you want to get yourself to the point where you're like something flutters in your space. You can recognize it for what it is. And you know your next course of action through your paternal aspect and the maternal aspect, the relationship of both, because you're constantly expressing both. There's never just a one or the other. And that behavior, not just that, every single behavior you ever do is development of your spirit. Like all behavior is in light of you. Like you put your stamp on everything by behaving in the way that you do. It is officially now part of who you are because you made that behavior. And it doesn't have to be like that now and forever and always. That's how your behavior and how your understanding of your behavior develops your spirit. So when I get to that child aspect, it's like you want more of it, but we need to rename it. I think as children, we don't feel understood. And I think that when your personal, maternal, and paternal aspects are in alignment, it's like it overlooks your relationship with the child aspect. So if the child is understood by the paternal and maternal aspects, there's no what is going on and why is this happening to me, but just to focus on what's in front of me and what I'm doing about it. I think that's my favorite and most healthiest way I've found to look at the world around me. And I've identified it as having that paternal and maternal in alignment, where I keep finding myself in comfort zones, but also experiencing new things and new people without fear or resentment, because I trust how I feel about things and I act in a way that is understood of what I've already gone through in life experiences. And if the two can remain in alignment and I'm not afraid of my surroundings and I keep putting myself in situations that are beneficial for me, short-term and long-term, mindful of that as well. That not just what feels good right now, but does this make sense for me? Is tomorrow Allison going to feel good about this? That's the more important question to ask than is 5-year-old Allison going to be proud of herself for this? When we look at that childhood aspect, it's really easy to see where the damage comes into play when you were struck by something as a child, like just shocked by your surroundings, and then it made an impact, and then you have to unpack it in some kind of way to understand it. Like this is just the cycle of growing up. But depending on how big those stunning moments were, there may be a lot to unpack. So I was stunned a lot, but then also kind of busy a lot. I never really gave myself time to think and unpack my thoughts. I just stayed pretty busy and packed more on top of it and more and more and more. So I was in consumption mode and not expression mode. And that was not great for me. And especially because I wasn't learning and integrating, I was just consuming. I was just taking in and wasting is what like my personal relationship with my body felt like. So to get that in alignment, I had to like revisit that childhood aspect and find out how I could make my life interesting again. How I could have that drive to want to do the next thing, to want to go do more, to want to see more, to learn more, to feel more. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to feel more. I kept trying to feel less because what I felt wasn't good, and that carried on with me. It felt heavy because I never gave myself time to unpack it. None of the stuff was all that heavy altogether, but when I didn't stop to think about what it was and what it meant, I just repeated it over and over and over and then compacted new information on top of it. Like that's not development, that's pressure. And it stunts your growth. So when I visit that maternal aspect now to unpack it, to see how, not only what it is, but how do I feel about what it is? That relationship can be understood now in the present day as it relates to your literal childhood self, and you can start to forgive yourself and life just gets easier. I got kind of caught in this childhood trap of really just like a misery pit where I would do these meditations and really developed a really strong, awesome meditation for myself to get into these childhood memories, to my personal childhood body, to where I can visualize myself in my childhood home in such a passionate real specific way that it feels like it's around me when my eyes are closed. Like, and I can navigate through my home just like I did, and I can feel the carpet in my toe. Like, I can get down to specifics of how loose the button was on the ottoman. I spent so much time in that space trying to heal that little kid and figure out where we went wrong and why we went wrong. And we'd go back into these memories. Like, I'd see it for what it was. I'm like, okay, this wasn't about me. I felt the impact of the situation based on what was going on with them. And it got convoluted by my understanding, and I took that on when it wasn't mine, released. It's really easy to identify it comfortably without judgment in that memory space, in like the imagination station. It's very easy to get rid of and just pick it apart and get over it. And then I had an aunt tell me recently, like, that I was one of the happiest kids that she remembers. Like, I was always just laughing around and jumping from one thing to another. And I forgot, like, I got myself to a point where I forgot that I actually kind of had a happy childhood. I was doing so much work on the broken kid that I forgot that there was still an entire healthy kid that I spent no time celebrating. And that's the real part that I have trouble with today, is celebrating the happy kid. I don't want to get excited about something and then told that I'm stupid for it, or that it's cheesy or corny. I just want everyone to play along. And I understand why people don't or why they can't. And nobody owes me anything anyway. But I think that's what we all want. We all have a desire for connection. I realized early on no one was going to play my game. Whatever my game was, people weren't interested in it. You know, playing video games with my siblings, I was the youngest. I wasn't good. I was really easy to beat up and steal stuff for points. Like, these games that we would play, they would kick my butt. When I played these games as an adult, I absolutely crush it. Like, I would love to face my siblings now because I think it would be a blast. But if 3 turn on the 1, then they'll kick my butt again, and I'm like, was I maybe just good at this game the whole time and never had a chance to actually play because they were beating me down because I was the easiest target? That's kind of how it felt growing up. And not just with siblings, but like with friends too. Nobody was interested in playing my game or letting me get ahead. And I resented it, but I wasn't powerful enough to do anything about it. I never knew how to participate with that. The connection was important to me. It wasn't what we were doing or why we were doing it. It was the fact that we were doing it together. So if you made it not fun for me, I didn't want to do it together with you. Remember in elementary school, I had a friend who would come over to my house and we would be deciding what to play next. She had strong opinions on what she liked to do and what she was willing to do. I was more flexible, but I still had ideas. So when it came to like, okay, your idea or mine, and we're at my house, she would say, okay, well, we're going to play my game because I'm the guest. That's the polite thing to do. And I was like, okay, checks out. We'll do that. And then we go along and play our game. On the other side, when I go to visit her at her house and we get into that same situation, we're like, okay, your game or mine? And I'm like, okay, cool. So the polite thing for you to do here would be to allow me to choose, because that's what we did at my house. Yeah. But then the narrative changes there to, no, it's my house and it's my rules and we're going to play this. On occasion, I would argue the back and forth a little bit, but it never really mattered to me. I never wanted to spend my time arguing and fighting. And every time that I did spend my time arguing and fighting and trying to like stick up for myself and then ultimately getting my way, nobody's having a good time with me anyway. It wasn't that I couldn't stick up for myself. It's just that I never really saw that it was worth it. Even when I got what I wanted, being right was never better than being together. And when I exacerbated it and stirred the pot on such a level, it really made it a bad time for everybody. It was not worth fighting for myself. So I still think about that little kid. I think about that little kid whose innocence is broken and doesn't want to come up with ideas because she never gets to actually see them out, especially not with others. And I was thinking about this when it comes to attention and connection. As a kid, I was told that I was always looking for attention, or told to quiet. Like, it was just always told to me that I was looking for attention. And I never understood what that meant. And when I finally started to grasp it, I felt so misunderstood and really sad about it. because nobody liked people who were attention seeking. And a lot of my behaviors were defined as attention seeking. Attention is primary. It's not something that can be shared. We don't share attention. We share connection. You have the ability to be attentive. So from an outsider's point who would have to direct their attention in my direction for me to have the connection that I was seeking, yes, I would need their attention for my connection. But I never want to be tended to. I never want to be attended to. I don't want the attention. I don't want to be noticed. I don't want all eyes on me. I want to share and participate and develop with you. That's the true connect. Like, that's what a true connection is. It's growth and development together and different on purpose. And that's what the maternal and paternal aspects offer the child aspect. Curiosity and wonder developed in a harmonious relationship between the structure and your relationship to it. When something enters your field, if you can balance those three aspects, you're golden. So to go into all those childhood memories and all that stuff, like I said, it made me forget that I had a happy childhood. And then as an adult now, when I'm acknowledging that childlike wonder and curiosity and letting myself be okay with being wrong, like being okay to listen to conversations about whether or not the earth is flat without being worried about what it says about me, or saying that like I wouldn't even bother to waste my time with conversations like that because of what it said about me, rather than just a true curiosity and other fun ideas that could ignite on behalf of that. Like, I just wouldn't waste my time with anything that wasn't productive and wasn't pattern or structure that I could use in a way that I could understand. It had to be something I could use in adult form for me to entertain it for entertainment. So that's why I say we need to disconnect the child from that curiosity and wonder and exploration and all of that. When you have it tied to your inner child, there's a tendency for it to be like, it's okay to be creative and curious and wander around like in the bedroom, grown adult activities. But to tie that into a conversation and to identify that aspect as an inner child, it just feels yucky. It's yucky to say those things in the same sentence. And if it's hard to say out loud, then it probably like feels that way internally too. Like, don't connect those two aspects. They have no place together. In the real world, you can see and identify that. But internally, when you're trying to foster and develop that inner child aspect, but have it named in this way, you can only develop it in certain areas if internally it doesn't feel okay. So father goes to paternal now, goes to pattern recognition. That's my pattern partner, is the paternal aspect. The maternal aspect, it's really easy for me to dive into feelings. Like I say, how does it feel? And that is very easy for me to put into a tactile, sensory way to consume. So now you can have that relationship developed with the grown-up stuff without it being weird. Doesn't have to say like, what do my actions now say about that little girl back then? Nothing, because you're not her anymore. And instead of wanting to impress her, what will my actions today put in store for Allison 2 weeks from now? If you have a healthy relationship with your past and you like feel comfortable in your day-to-day, focus on developing and fostering that relationship with future. If your present is pretty hard or difficult or doesn't feel like something you want to develop, I think it's healthy to identify that and try to turn it into something else before trying to grow from that space. But if you don't feel good being curious about stuff, or like letting yourself be weird, letting yourself be corny, letting yourself be embarrassed, like your inner child is weighing you down. It's supposed to be fluttering, carefree, and easy flowing, accessible and light. So if it carries that weight, like go out and have fun. If you don't even remember how to have fun or what you enjoy or what's fun for you, you got to start figuring it out. Like whatever you do to appease yourself, whether or not that's serving you, figure out what it is that makes you want to go do that thing. Try to identify the feeling of like, where does this actually feel good? Does it feel good in anticipation for it? Because if so, then maybe you just need to plan better things to look forward to. Does it feel good when you're in the middle of whatever project you're doing? If so, then great. Keep scheduling these type of projects. Keep having this available for you. If it's something that doesn't serve you, identify the aspect that brings you to life. Identify the part of the day where your eyes light up and try to deposit that in every little aspect of your life in any way that you can. For me, it's making up games. I like to make up games and rules for stuff that don't matter and nobody else knows about. There's no keeping score or anything like that, but there's a license plate game that I play by myself during every single time that I'm in my car. If you see a license plate with a repeating number, that's good. So whenever it's good, then I'm like, cool. And that's how the game works. Nothing's happening, no scores are kept, but these little things, so I'll pull up behind a car and I'll see that it's got a 22 in their license plate. And I'm like, heck yeah. And then I look over and I see that another one's got a 44. And then like on my trip now that was going to just be like 5 minutes of listening to the radio, I've got a game developed where I'm paying attention to my surroundings still. I'm very active in where I'm headed and what I'm doing. I've just added a layer of goodness to every single time I'm in the car. And that's the God aspect, is goodness. The only thing, like the thing that made the Bible or any religion accessible to me was adding an O. And that came from 12-step groups. They express this idea as like, you have your God of your understanding or a higher power. They're really loose on that idea, so they're not shoving a religion down your throat or becoming like tied to any specific whatever. To identify a power greater than yourself is what helps get you out and away from where you are and what you're doing and what you don't want to be doing. So when I look at what is good for me is not good for everybody else. I know that because nobody wants to play my games. When I got to the point where I couldn't identify what I wanted to do, where I couldn't remember what entertained me, that started to feel really bad. I looked to spirituality to help like return to source as it's presented in those realms. Some people say return to source is death, but like to be in touch with your personal, truest, highest self, whatever you want to call it. To me, that's returning to source, even though it's not hand in hand with death. It's hand in hand with life. Anyway, I was optimistic, but I didn't expect to be fixed or healed. But I was having fun with it. This is something new, and what can I do with it? So I would do these guided meditations where you are still meditating, but you're active in your brain the entire time too. You're being told what to do, so there's a mental participation. Where I had the understanding previously of meditation of like clear your thoughts and just rest with your body. Be still. And I was unable to do that. That doesn't exist for me. But when I learned that the outward stillness, what it appears to be, is not what it is internally, and at my highest level of meditation, my brain is firing off in the most passionate ways, and I am having full entire experiences in my imagination. And that's what I call the space where like I experience internally, is just my imagination. I have very, very real experiences by participating with my imagination. And in my imagination is where I talk to myself about how I identify with my body. I put that all in the same room. So doing these guided meditations, it's like the community encourages that you do something over and over and over again to fully integrate it. So like even if it doesn't make sense, just like tell yourself these affirmations every single day and you'll start to believe it. You'll start to integrate it. You'll start to see it show up. When you remind yourself about it, when you give yourself a sample, it shows up later. So then when it shows up in your field later, like love it and appreciate it, and it will show up for you in these ways. The best ways for you to show up for yourself is by developing a relationship with yourself. But they're like, even if it doesn't make sense, just do this and do this and do this and do this, and you'll start to see it becomes a reality. Especially if the people coaching and guiding you have learned this in their own way by saying like, oh, I learned it this way. Here's why it's wrong. This is my way that works for me on a regular basis. So then as an experiencer, I am adopting these and I am trying to understand as I am told to be understood. But going through those guided meditations where it's like, oh, just do A, B, and C. And as I'm doing it, as they say to do it, I can get myself in these memories and everything's great. There are other times when it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel great. I would question whether it was my personal resistance to this. Like, am I not good enough to have access to this? Or am I doing something wrong to where like other people feel great when they're done? Why don't I? But after doing guided meditations, especially body meditations where like you tense up certain parts and release them, like you really start to develop a new physical relationship with your body. So to tie in the parts that I learned and liked from that, it was easy to see how I could integrate the maternal aspect, the way that it feels based on the what that is happening. My least favorite thing that I did that is also my favorite example for this. So like fracking is when we like dig into the ground, deposit to expand, and it breaks everything up and we pull out what we need from it. And once it's extracted, it's basically bullshit. And we've left our foundation a mess. There is a meditation, ground, clear, and protect. So many people in the spiritual community, especially the people that I was listening to, swear by this, that it creates a safety bubble for you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it does. Because when I do it over and over and over again, it actually doesn't feel good and it feels like fracking. When I would sit there through even these like guided meditations or read how to do it on my own and try to do it on my own without guidance to see if maybe I could do it in a way that felt different, I couldn't. The way it feels to ground, clear, and protect by most of the ways that I've been guided to do it are to connect with your surroundings, get your feet on the earth, get your feet at least flat on the ground, but make a primary connection with your foundation. And then imagine that connection, whether it's roots growing from your feet into the earth or a beam of light that connects you to like just a white beam of light going through your body that connects you below and above and has like a flow natural channel, or again, your feet growing roots into the earth. And those roots are like your body. So your body is the tree, the roots are your feet to the ground. You are developing this connection with the earth. That's grounding. Then the next thing is to clear, which is to clear out your energy field. And when you have this connection with like Mother Earth, you're able to do this with ease. It's supposed to be. This never felt easy for me. This always felt like I had to work really hard to let go of the tension. I had to really like focus on my muscles and have to do like the tense then relax and the tense then relax. And once I would relax, it would kind of ease up, but it never felt like a full clearing. It did feel like a process of release because I initiated a process, but it never felt like, whoo, and then it was gone. So that's grounding and clearing. And then the last step is protecting. And this is giving yourself a safety bubble. And the safety bubble, or I don't know, however you want to put it. I always, like when I think of, give yourself a shield of white light, I just imagine like the Good Witch from the Wizard of Oz, where you're just in this pink precious bubble. And it's not that you're like untouchable. You can still go and do whatever you want to do, but you have this like an intentional presence surrounding you that is going to filter and factor your preference into your system. And most people call that love and light. So then you only get love and light into your system. And then you don't really mess with the darkness, or you don't even notice it because you're in the high vibe bubble. And that to me felt like fracking. It felt like I would connect to the earth, dump all my shit, and go about my business, leaving my foundation shaky and me just, I don't know. It never really felt better. I couldn't understand why so many people could get behind this and what I was doing wrong. But I joke all the time about how I see the world backwards. So I wonder if I feel the world backwards, and I try that instead. So when I reverse it, I first start by protecting myself and reminding myself like, okay, it's like a little preamble, a little like, here's what we're doing. Before we get into it, we're going to do A, B, and C. Like, we are too big right now. We need to let go of some of this. And when we're done, we're going to feel better. It sets the intention for feeling better at the end. It tells yourself what you're doing right now. You're letting your body know what's coming. You're reminding yourself that you're in a safe environment and that this is for your benefit, that you're choosing to help yourself. You protect yourself. And in that process, you already start the clearing. I still do pressure clearing where I will stretch out certain things on my body, or if I feel like tense in one way or I'll crack a knuckle. Whatever it is that needs done, I don't look for problems, but I sit with myself. And when I feel twitchy or like not settled, I'll draw attention to the area that's not settled. I'll let it dance, mess around with it, press it, rub out a knot, whatever the issue is. Give it attention, make my connection with it, and then it goes away. There's a feeling of relief and release. And once I'm at ease, then you tap into Mother Earth. Then you tap into nature and your surroundings. You allow yourself to share yourself with your surroundings once you're in a position to be shared. You don't just go out there sharing your energy with the world, matching the energy around you. That's not a flow state, is like getting through crazy vibes throughout the day by matching them. The flow state is maintaining your directive while encountering anything else. That is your groundedness, your clearedness, your protectiveness. All of it is being okay where you are when you are. It allows you access to that childlike curiosity in any situation. If you've already paid enough attention for how you feel and what it is, and that's safe enough that you have cleared up that energy to now where you can participate with it, you can put that childlike wonder in it. You can be happy by looking at license plates. You can have fun by doing a project that may carry a lot of weight, but it can also be fun to do now. It doesn't have to have the pressure of what it means, or if I don't do this right, it means this, but this is what we're doing. How can we do it to the fullest? And fullest even carries this like it must be good or it must be perfect or must be the biggest, brightest, bestest. It doesn't have to be any of that. The goodest. That's what we're looking for. How can we make this good? Everything that we have is what it is. How can we make it good? Play your games. Make it fun. And when it's not, don't try to force the fun. I did this with my laundry recently where I was like, I used to have so much fun doing laundry and feeling like a game when I would like schedule it out in a certain way. It's like, oh, if I do this here and then I can flip it over at this time and then I'll still have time to make this. And then when I come home, it'll be ready to fold and nothing will be crinkled. Yeah, it was something that I had to do and needed to be done. But when I could get it down to a science that worked, it was like I was playing my own game with it. Even though it was something I had to do, it was fun to do it in that way. Then it got to the point where it was really, really, really frustrating not to be able to do it in that way because it was so streamlined and specific and I was good at it. Not to have that available was definitely frustrating. So then I didn't have fun with any of it. And then I'm like doing laundry all grumpy, wondering how to make it more fun or why it's not as fun as it used to be, rather than realizing that it has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with my present state of mind. If I just took care of myself for a moment and actually did that protect, clear, and ground, I could probably have fun without needing to deposit a game. I could probably get back to the ease and enjoyment of what I'm doing with what's in front of me. I could remember how easy it is to love what I'm doing when it flutters by, when I have released all the crumminess that is whatever it is weighing me down that has me hating laundry. Usually what my feelings are don't have anything to do with what's going on around me. That is like a clear, obvious way to tell that I'm imbalanced. If your sweater is snagged by a nail, like you can be mad at inanimate objects. But are you more mad at that or are you mad at yourself for getting snagged? Because yeah, it did it and you did it. But why are we mad at all? When you can deposit more good into your structures and deposit more good into your relationship to your material structures, you add the substance to it, you are kind of floating in essence of yourself. You know what you're about, you know where you're about, you know what you're about and who you're about, and all of your aboutness is within you and essentially available to you. You are yourself in essence. When you are the apple of your own eye, when it's not apparent, but you have that curiosity, that's the goodness. Pay attention to how your body feels. Pay attention to what your mind thinks. Develop a relationship between the two of them and have a game plan for when they're out of order. Thanks for listening to another episode of Unravel with Allison. If you have any feedback, questions, want to chit chat, or stay up to date on new releases, follow me on Instagram at Allison K. Steele. Let's keep in touch. Again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next episode.